Hi guys, me again. Good to see you. As promised in this week's Breakfast with Ignite, I spoke about me and Florin getting together and producing a video on reputation, the reputation engine on the Ignite Ratings platform, how it works, how you go about earning reputation, what reputation means, etc, etc, etc. In fact, I've been speaking about that video for a couple of weeks. This is now that video, so we finally got around to doing it. Before we start, I actually thought it'd be helpful to have a quick glossary of some of the terms I'm going to use. I'm going to ask Florin as well to drop in a little screenshot so you can see exactly which part of the platform I'm talking about when I mention certain terms. So within the Ignite Ratings platform, we talk a lot about reputation. I think that one's fairly self-explanatory. That is, each user's reputation on the platform. What reputation does is it dictates influence. So we'll be using reputation and influence. We'll also be referring to ratings, and this is where Florin's going to stick in his screen. A rating is the top level comment, or it's an asset rating. It's what starts a discussion. So I'm confusing myself already. So rating is level 1. Let's call that. Review is level 2. What a review is a user review of a rating. It's a peer-to-peer review of someone else's rating. Then below the review we have currently one comment layer only. That may change in the future, but it's one comment layer only. So anything below a review is a comment. So that's a layer 3 and onwards. So we speak about reputation, influence, ratings, reviews, and also comments. There we go. So that's my quick glossary. So where to start in terms of talking about reputation? I like to use the analogy of the platform mirroring real life. We've tried to create the platform so that it works in an intuitive way. So think of this. Think of you turning up to a party. You walk into a room of people you've never met before. Some of the people in that room are already friends. They've known each other for years. They went to school together, etc. You as a new arrival in that room, you have no reputation. People don't know who you are. So if you start talking to somebody at that party and recommending that they buy certain stocks or shares, or even actually a certain model of car, what that person you're speaking to will do, I suspect, is not put a lot of stock in what you're saying because they don't know who you are. But what they'll do is walk across the room later in the evening and speak to one of their existing friends and say, "Oh, what do you know about the latest BMW 3 Series? Is it really as good as what this guy over here just told me?" And if that guy that you're speaking to is someone who's reputable, someone that you put a lot of trust and stock in, their response will either validate or invalidate the original person's recommendation, the original person's submission to you. So that is basically how the Ignite Ratings platform works. We are all, on day one, new arrivals to the party. So we need to start earning reputation. So you earn reputation by submitting ratings to the platform and then having other people at the party, other Ignite Ratings users, review your ratings and say whether or not they agree with the opinions you've expressed, or with the research you've done, or with the content you've submitted, etc., or whether they disagree with them. So how we do this in a system, well, one question that actually comes up and I'm going to try and answer directly is, what happens in that kind of ecosystem when everyone has similar sort of reputation? For example, the day the platform goes live, which is really the only time this will happen. What happens in that scenario is dictated by the actual architecture of the platform itself and what we're doing with the platform. So I need to actually explain to you how we look at reputation within the system. So reputation isn't as simple as scoring from 0 to 100. We did actually, very back in the early days, start with basic 0 to 100 scoring, and you sit somewhere and your score goes up and down depending on whatever. That doesn't exist anymore. Reputation now is limitless. You can earn limitless reputation. So what we need to do then is normalize the spread of reputation within a system. So the way we do that, I've got my trusty Microsoft Surface here. I'm going to show you how we do that. So the way we do that within the system is we look at the entire population of active users in the system, and we look at the lowest reputation score at any given point in time, and we look at the highest reputation score. And what happens when you do that is you end up, if I can just plot a quick graph here, you end up with, if we say the y-axis over here is the number of users, excuse my handwriting, and the x-axis over here is reputation. That's a P, rep, there we go. So what you end up with when considering the entire population is you end up with a really nice, in theory, standard deviation bell curve. that you can, of course, cut down into percentiles from 0 to 100. So the 100th percentile being up here and the 0 percentile being here. Now, on day one, so this is to go back to the original question, answer the question, on day one, where everyone has a reputation of 0, they will coexist within the 1st and the 100th percentile at the same time. So for a very, very, very short period of time, everyone will be considered an average percentile of 50. So everyone's weight in the system will be the same. Everyone will have the same influence, and we'll get onto influence in a second. So then what happens is you'll see very, 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 very quickly people's reputations will start to deviate. People who are more active on the platform will have the opportunity to earn reputation more quickly. The ones that are more active but filling the platform with nothing but nonsense will have their reputation, well, their reputation won't take off. You can't have a negative reputation. If you're at 0, you're at 0. So anyway, what reputation means. So what happens next? How do we develop our reputation? So if we go back to my little graph over here, if I remove, I've removed my graph. Didn't mean to do that, just meant to remove the points. I'll draw the graph back in. So we've got, there we go, our bell curve again. So how you develop reputation. If you're a user with 0 reputation and you leave a rating on an asset, that doesn't automatically create reputation for you. You then it's then required that peers, your other users in the system, review your rating. And that's where things get really interesting. We've seen in the beta testing, there's a lot of expectation amongst our users that reputation is linear, which it isn't. So we had users say, oh, I've seen that somebody's rated my submission 3 stars, but my reputation didn't go up 3 points. Why is that the case, etc. And I'm going to show you now why that's the case. So if you leave a rating, and let's say it's a 90th percentile user comes along, so he'll be somewhere up here. He comes along and he leaves you a 4-star review of your rating. That user, being a more influential user, being a more reputable user within the ecosystem, will have more impact on your own reputation score than somebody like yourself who's a new user, who maybe might exist down in the 2nd or 3rd percentile down here, who also leaves you a 4-star rating. So we have to weight those ratings. So this guy giving you a 4-star rating may well increase your reputation by 4 points. It doesn't work quite like that. I'm simplifying it for the purpose of this video, but this is how it works. Whereas this guy down here, who also left you the 4-star rating, because he's a new user, because he's in a low percentile, you might find that actually that only bumps your reputation up by, for argument's sake, 1 point, because we're weighting the influence that he has on your reputation. Again, imagine your room, imagine your party. Imagine somebody telling you something about someone at that party and you didn't really know either person. You wouldn't necessarily put any stock in what the second guy said about that first person. But if your best friend told you something about this new arrival at the party, you'd probably listen to it. It's that simple. So yeah, excuse me, I've got notes for this evening. I've got notes for this so I don't get lost. So having covered that, what is reputation for? Okay, so we now know how reputation is generated. We now know how you can go about earning reputation, and similarly losing it as well. For the same reason, influence works. The influence of the reputable user will decrease your reputation if they give you a low review score versus a new user trying to do the same thing. So again, this reinforces the idea of the most reputable users within the system having the most influence. It wouldn't be right if you could spend a lot of time building up your reputation and new users could come along and destroy it just because they were trolls or playing with the platform or figuring out how it worked. They wanted to press buttons and blah, blah, blah. So don't worry, that's all protect. This whole reputation engine is a very, very, very clever thing that protects from a lot of that. It also, for that same reason, prevents collusion, etc. It's very, very hard to do, which is a question we got a lot during our crowd sale was, oh, how do you stop people ganging up and affecting the ratings and blah, 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 via this method. So having earned a rating, see, that's why we need the glossary, confuse myself. Having earned the reputation, what does that mean? What can you do with that reputation? Well, we just demonstrated one use, which is that you can have an influence on other users' reputation within the system. The more reputation you have, the greater influence you have on others' reputation when you're reviewing their ratings, etc. Or in the case of the comments section, so you'll see the third level comments we talked about earlier, doesn't actually have a slider, doesn't have a score that you can attribute to the user leaving the review, which is the layer above, but it has a thumbs up and thumbs down. That is a sentiment-based system, which again works off reputation. I'll give a high-level explanation because to go into detail is a bit technical. It's a sentiment-based thumbs up, thumbs down, Reddit style system that works off the amount of reputation that is being deployed on either side of the thumbs up, thumbs down versus the number of users. It's not just, 10 people said this, but 8 people said this, therefore we go with the 10. Doesn't work like that. It looks at the reputation of those users giving a thumbs up, thumbs down, which then in turn knocks back up to the second level and decides how much influence that review has on the original person's rating. You with me? I think I'm just about with me. So as you can see, influence is very important in the way it knocks through the system and filters through the system. The second, and obviously most important thing that your reputation will do is allow you to have influence on a rating, on an asset rating. So if you leave a top level rating across any of the number of categories we use, or in fact one in each if you want, then your reputation at the second you press the submit button, determines what your initial influence is on that asset rating. Now, what happens with influence is that it will decay. This is built into the system deliberately. Again, mirroring real life, something that Florin, my erstwhile cameraman, might tell me today with regards to, again, using the BMW 3 Series example, his new BMW 3 Series, which I'm sure he's got on order, he'll tell me why he's ordered it. He's, it's great, it's these features, that features, everything else. In 12 months' time, what he said to me might not be as relevant because BMW might have the new 3 Series out, or there might be a better Mercedes equivalent, or blah, blah, blah. So opinions in the real world are time limited. They're only relevant to the listener for a certain period of time. And we try and emulate that in the Ignite Ratings platform. So the beta testers will have seen that they can choose a period of validity for a rating. Now, the reason we do this is that's the period of time over which your influence will decay. So you might think, that's great then. So I can just choose the highest period available to ensure that I have the influence available for the longest amount of time on an asset. No, because it's a double-edged sword. Because should circumstances change, should the world around you change and you find that your opinion actually is pretty much backwards in terms of so for example, if you give an opinion about, I don't know, the price of a particular cryptocurrency on an exchange, Bitcoin, I think Bitcoin's going to be 10,000 USD within the next 3 months, and actually within a month or two it's down to 2,000 USD, let's hope not, but assuming it is, then you might suddenly see how a lot of people will start disagreeing with your opinion, saying, well, that's not valid, you clearly got that wrong, it doesn't look like it's going in that direction. So it can be a double-edged sword in terms of automatically opting for a longer validity period. So we really urge people to think about the information they're providing, the quality of the information they're providing, and how relevant they think it's going to be and for how long. So with influence decay taken into account, with your influence on an asset rating decaying over time as the rating is built up, as perhaps a position is taken in an asset by the index, if the asset's rated highly enough. How does your reputation interplay with that influence? Because obviously if the influence is set at the moment that you leave a rating, but your reputation is changing, well, it can change by the minute, it can change by the second, but assuming, let's say it's changing daily because you're submitting content across a number of different assets and people are leaving you reviews and you're leaving reviews for others and you're getting your upvotes and your downvotes and everything else. How does reputation interact with that influence on an asset rating? And it's quite simple in that reputation is dynamic and it remains dynamic. So whilst your influence might be set as at the moment you leave a rating, if your reputation continues to grow over the time that that influence would otherwise decay, you can actually outperform the decay, because the daily decay rate is a percentage of your reputation. But your reputation being dynamic, it can go up and it can go down. So you can actually find that you can end that decay period with maybe more reputation than you started with, probably not enough to completely offset a decay, but probably enough to offset it by some amount. So this is quite cool, because if you're leaving numerous ratings across an asset in the different categories, or if you're, as we encourage you to do, curating your opinions and actually updating your ratings then the newest ratings will always outweigh the oldest ones because your decay curve starts later. So to finish off, influence. The really important aspect to influence, and why influence is important, is because influence determines the rewards that you, the user, can receive in the instance where we actually take a position in an asset. So where we take a position in an asset, as when that asset is closed, as you know, 50% of the gains are returned to those that had influence on the asset rating. Now, what we look at to determine what your share is, and don't forget, there's a small portion that is set aside and distributed according to token holding. We're not looking at that part, we're looking at the influence, the bulk of what's being distributed. We look at the maximum influence that you had on an asset during its ratings life cycle. So during the point in time that a rating was very first generated, all the way through to the time that a position is closed, the maximum influence you had at any point in time, taking into account all the various different categories that you can rate, the fact that you can leave multiple ratings in the same category. There will be a time bar on that, so you can't do it too often. So something within reason. We're not actually set that yet, but it could be once every 48 hours you can submit a new rating, etc. So taking all that into account, this is where the real clever stuff happens, all the secret sauce, and this is why we have to try and keep this explanation very high level. All of that is aggregated, all of that is amalgamated. We look at that holistically for the entire asset, and then we work out based on the number of users that have been involved in the ratings process and what your maximum influence was at any given point of time during that asset life cycle, we then can determine what your reward is. So that is why influence is important, and that is why reputation determines influence. And that is a very high level overview of how the reputation engine works, what it means for you, how you will be able to generate reputation for yourself, how you'll be able to put that reputation to work, and how you'll be able to influence others' reputation using your own. It is very high level. I appreciate it's very confusing. As I said, there's a lot of secret squirrel stuff in there as well, because it is very proprietary to Ignite, what we're trying to do. This kind of thing hasn't, to my knowledge, been put together before. You've got an idea now of how it works, but I appreciate that you probably will have questions, which is great. So if you do have questions, please comment boxes below, leave them there, and we'll either try and address them directly in the comments, or maybe, I suspect we will do a follow-up video actually, so as and when the public beta is ready, we'll do something similar to this video again, but probably showing you in real time how these things are working. I'll get the devs to set up a couple of different user accounts, and we can see how user A influences user B, etc. We'll try and do something like that. But in the interim, I hope this has been informative. I hope you found some of what we've discussed useful. Again, if you do have questions, please ask, and if need be, we will do a follow-up. But for now, I guess this was the second episode of Back to School with Ignite. Thank you for joining me. I hope I haven't confused you as much as I've confused myself. See you later. Bye.